Yes, welcome in. Badgers getting towards the end down in Platteville. Just two more practices left. Jesse, are you going to be missing that drive to Platteville every morning?
I wouldn't exactly say missing, Zach, but there's more practices afterward, and it's always good to see what the team is up to. It's just a long drive there and back, but it's not about us. It's about them.
Is it, though?
I don't know.
Media has a me and an I in it.
That is true.
No. Obviously, they're getting towards the end of it. They've got two practices left. They'll be there on Friday, and then they will be there on the field at night, Saturday night, when they are holding an open practice for fans to attend. So if you want to do that, get a look at the Badgers, that's your option to do it here in the preseason. Obviously, we got a spring game, so they got to see that. But the only time this fall that you're going to have chances on Saturday night down in Platteville. Should be interesting. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. They haven't done a ton of scrimmaging for our purposes. Would you agree with that? Like, I don't know. We haven't seen a ton of that to this point. They were in full pads on, what was that, Monday? And that's the only time they've been in full pads. So we'll see what they do on Saturday night. That said, they were on the practice field the last two mornings, and we were down there, and we got an opportunity to chat with the defensive line and then the running backs after practice. So we're going to get into some of that. But first, Jesse, let's talk about what we saw in practice a little bit. And I want to start. Do you want to start with today or yesterday, or just big picture thoughts?
Big picture works for me. I have a feeling this is headed in the direction of running backs, as it should, but I'm interested to see what you got on the Chiron.
Yeah. It's a defensive player. But that's fine. That's okay. Matthew Traynor, who has been a storyline for sure throughout these first 8 practices. And we'll talk about the defense, but you're right. We need to start with the running backs and Dilin Jones, who, again, he missed a little bit of time with a little bit of a shoulder, but he's been back the last couple of days and looked really, really good, especially, I thought, Thursday morning.
I think Thursday was the best practice he's had so far, and it's a high bar at Wisconsin when you're evaluating running back play. We were spoiled for so long, even in the last 15 years or so, with guys who are all worthy of Mount Rushmore discussion at Wisconsin. And so it's not fair to put anything on a young guy who really hasn't played, and I'm not going to do that. I just think every once in a while, maybe more often at Wisconsin and other schools, someone comes along and you go, whoa, that guy's got a chance. And man, he has looked so good these last 2 days. There's a couple plays in particular that stand out. So I'll start with practice Wednesday. There was a play where he caught a ball and ran upfield, and a cornerback was there waiting, and he just knocked him right over. Just ran through him like he was a peewee player. And that was one of those moments where you realize the strength and the power that he has. But on Thursday, he was everywhere. I know we talk often about the fact that they're not necessarily trying to tackle, and you don't know whether something would have been a 4-yard gain or a 24-yard gain. But he broke off a run with just a little crease that went for, I had a 74-yard touchdown. I'm not sure if anybody really got his hands on him. And there were a handful of other plays. For example, they were doing a red zone sequence. They had the ball at the 15. He got a hole and he drove all the way down to the 1. There was a toss play that I had going for 30-plus yards. He was everywhere. And if you're going to compliment the running back well, those holes are being opened because the offensive line has started to find its footing a little bit. And so definitely these last couple practices, you can start to see what Jeff Grimes' offense wants to be. Certainly there are a lot of other elements that we've seen, but that's where it's going to start. And I know you said this earlier in camp. To me, I don't feel like there's any question at this point that Dilin Jones is going to be your number 1 running back when they trot out there for the first series in week 1, unless something happens between now and then. That's not to say Darian Dupree and Cade Giacomelli aren't going to be a part of the rotation. They absolutely are. I just think Jones is really separating himself.
Yeah, Jones is at the top, and I think Dupree would be second if we were to do a depth chart. But we're not doing a depth chart. That's not what we're not doing a depth chart. But if you were to do a depth chart, which we're not, it would be Jones and then Dupree for me, and then obviously Cade Giacomelli. But we talked to running backs coach Devin Spalding today, and he said, he'd like to play all of them, obviously, but he thinks the top 4 could play, and that includes Gideon Atuka, who looks different than he did. Well, we saw this in the spring a little bit, but he looks different, certainly different than he did as a true freshman last year. He is slimmed down. He is a bowling ball of intensity and energy and speed and one cut and go type of energy out of Gideon Atuka. I've loved what I've seen from him, and he takes a lot of big shots, but he also delivers a lot of big shots. You mentioned the one that Dilin Jones handed out to Kairos Gaines. Kairos Gaines is on the tracks, and Dilin Jones was coming through, and it was not going to go Kairos Gaines' way. And again, Dilin Jones is not a big dude, right? Like he's of the between. I'm talking about like he's not over 200 pounds, right? He's under 200 pounds, but he is quick, fast, and is one cut and go type of guy. But also he does have a little bit of a wiggle to him as well. Between him and Darren Dupree is the bigger guy, but Dilin Jones doesn't run like a small guy. Is I guess what I'm saying. A smaller guy. I'm not going to call him a small guy. I'm just saying a smaller guy.
Physically, Dilin Jones is just, it's wow. I mean, I was just standing next to him. He's wearing a cutoff, and you're like, my God, I can see why I wouldn't want to stand in his way. Obviously, I'm not someone who plays defense, but yeah, I mean, they've got a really talented running back room, and Gideon Atuka shouldn't be forgotten in this as well. It's a tough spot to come in a 3 running back class when the other 2 guys are as highly regarded as they are, but it also says something about Wisconsin and the belief they had in Atuka to bring him here. Devin Spalding says he wants to play all 4. Is that realistic? I don't know, but I also don't think it's out of the question. Like, we're talking about 3 running backs and Atuka is so far behind. Yeah, his reps have generally come with the reserves, and so when he's leveling somebody, it's not necessarily Austin Brown at the 3rd level or something like that. But I agree with you, Zach. He's been very impressive. He runs with a lot of power. He's a little bit quicker. As we've said, he's slimmed down, and so he's taken advantage of the opportunities. It is a difficult spot, but a good spot to be in if you're the running backs coach to decide how you want to divvy up these reps, because you want to do what's best for the team. You also want to keep guys happy. And if you really believe that all of these people warrant some carries, then you have to figure out how to make that happen. But as of now, the standout to me very clearly has been Dilin Jones.
When you talk to Dilin Jones, what stood out in your conversation? I'm sure you're going to be writing a story about it. But what stood out in your conversation about just where he is mentally going into this year? Because we didn't get to see him. We got to see Darren Dupree a lot last year, especially when they decided to, when Ches Malusi left, and it was Tyree Walker and Darren Dupree, and Darian got a lot of action there. And I don't know that he jumped out and hit everybody in the face. Towards the end of his season, he did, but just in a limited amount of snaps that we got to see, Dilin Jones broke off a really long run. But what's his mindset? Where is he at right now?
Well, first of all, I would say he is a man of few words. You ask him a question, he'll give you an answer in 1 sentence or 2, but he's very confident in himself, certainly. And he was talking about the power that he feels like he runs with. And I was asking him about, but it also looks like you've got some speed. Like when you get to the 2nd level, you're able to turn it on, and he's like, yeah, safety's not catching me. So there is that. I also think this offense suits him very well. Like, he's a downhill type of guy. Running between the tackles is exactly what he wants to do. He has said before he considers himself to be a physical, violent runner. Well, those are words that could come right out of Jeff Grimes' mouth in terms of what he's looking for in his offense. And I also think this wide zone scheme is going to be really beneficial for him. And he talked about it. He can make the offensive line right. And that was part of the appeal of this offense when I was talking to some of these old linemen in the preseason about the way they block. It gives the running back options, and a guy like Jones has been very decisive, and that's something that Spalding talked about as well. The quick decision-making, decisiveness, which is another thing that Grimes has talked about. Spalding feels like Jones has improved in every area, and I know I said this before, but going into spring ball, I just sort of assumed, well, Darren Dupree was the number 2 last year. The number 1 is gone. He's going to elevate into the starting role, and Dilin Jones probably slots into the number 2. And, of course, as spring went on, when Darren was dealing with a minor injury, Dilin started handling some of those top reps, and he just has not slowed down since.
So before anybody tweets at me or tells me I'm an idiot, Dilin Jones listed at 207. So when you're standing next to him and he looks that way, it's because he is. I was off on that, so I apologize about that. But Darren, between the two of them, if you put them next to each other, Darren's a little bit thicker than Dilin Jones. That said, they're both physical runners, and they're both willing to run over you. And I think all the backs in that room are. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I think Dupree, I don't know if he gets labeled as the shifty scat back. Certainly you hear that a lot. Oh, well, Dilin Jones is the power guy and Darian is shiftier, certainly, but he's got all the characteristics that you need. We've certainly seen him turn it upfield and just knock people backward. But we also know that one of the things they want to be able to do with him is split him out, get him the ball in space. He did that a ton when he was in high school at Mount Carmel. I do think that if you go with those two running backs, it's a very dynamic 1-2 running back combination, assuming, of course, that you get the blocking that you need from the offensive line. But there's a lot to be excited about with those two. And obviously, if those two weren't on the roster, then Wisconsin would have done some things differently this offseason in terms of evaluating a running back in the transfer portal. And when I asked Spalding about that, he mentioned, of course, it speaks to the confidence level we have in the room. Again, not very many scholarship running backs, but you like what you have, especially in those two young guys who could be the future at that position for Wisconsin for multiple years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate, and you may disagree, I don't anticipate all of them staying here, right? Like there's only one ball to go around. But that top two, if you can give them each some opportunities, maybe you can keep them happy. But it's tough. It's tough to keep them happy, just like it's tough to keep the wide receiver room happy wherever you go. And that's going to be something that Devin Spalding's going to have to work through. But that top two, would you say, and this is something Luke Fickell said in Vegas, that when Wisconsin has good offenses, it's the offensive line, but it's an future NFL guy. Do you think, and again, we haven't seen these guys play, but do you think they are? Do you think they have a couple of those guys in that room?
I'm
very
certainly
unfair.
Well, I'm certainly not going to say no at this point, but yeah, it is unfair because Dilin Jones played very little last year. I'd like to see what happens when he's matching up against the Alabamas of the world instead of late in a game against a bad Purdue team. But that is what has made Wisconsin incredible over those years. Yeah, great offensive linemen. Can't deny that. A lot of those guys ended up not only going to the NFL, but becoming among the highest paid at their position in the league. You had special running backs that, again, like Dylan was saying, well, you can make an O-lineman right. How often did we see plays over the years where, okay, you missed a block, this guy's dead to rights, but he's so amazing with his vision and his power and his speed that he just makes something happen. That's what you need. I think certainly the last few years, Wisconsin has not had that consistently. And Braylon Allen is an NFL running back, though he wasn't always healthy at Wisconsin. So if those guys can stay healthy, they're second-year players. I mean, Dilin Jones is a redshirt freshman. That means technically he's got 4 years in college. Now, if he's starting this year, I don't know that that's going to be the case. But yeah, there is a lot to like about that. And that's what you need if you want to be a run-first offense. Dynamic running backs who can be difference makers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Was there anything else that stood out about your conversations with the running backs before we move on to the defense, which I think maybe took the day today?
I think we pretty well covered it.
Okay. Let's jump into the defense because I felt like there were a lot of TFLs today. I felt like there was a lot of plays blown up. That's not to say that the offense didn't have success, but whether it was Corey Walker, whether it was Thomas Heiberger, and I think we should talk about Thomas Heiberger because he's getting some action 5 months after a pretty significant knee injury, which is, I shouldn't say shocking, but just impressive for him to get back. Charles Perkins as well. I mean, there were Aaron Witt. There were a number of times guys came, beat a block, and got inside and made a play. And that has been, I think, a consistent thing. And we talked about that at the beginning of the camp. How do you figure out a way to get more TFLs? How do you figure out a way to get at the quarterback? Because it didn't happen last year. And it doesn't mean anything right now at all. But we are seeing some signs of guys making plays.
The thing you hear constantly, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I say it doesn't mean anything, it has to actually happen in a game for me to believe in it. But we have seen some of this stuff on a day-to-day basis of guys being able to get in the backfield and make plays. And we'll see if it carries over. Still wait and see mode, but it's encouraging.
What I was going to say is the thing that you hear constantly is this, it has to be a mindset. And there's this attacking, aggressive mindset. And I do wonder, what does that actually mean and how does that manifest itself on the field? Because it's not like in the first 2 years they were saying we're going to have a weak mindset and we're not going to try and get TFLs. It has been a consistent talking point. It is something that Whitlow talked about when we had defensive line day on Wednesday. But also they've got different body types, as we've said many times. You are seeing some of that come to fruition where they are much more physical. You talk about a guy like Charles Perkins, Corey Walker, who missed a little bit of fall camp in week 1. I think Luke Fickell said on day 1 it was a bit of a back, but he has returned. A guy who's 297 pounds who can help set the edge. Well, that's a heck of a difference. And the linebacker group as well. They're still rotating a lot of different linebackers in part because Christian Allegro has been day to day, doesn't appear at this point like it's anything major. But again, if you've got a number one guy and if he isn't 100%, you can hold him out and evaluate other people. And that is why someone like a Thomas Heiberger has been able to get some 1 reps alongside Tackett Curtis. Garrison Soliday has as well. But Heiberger, we were very high on him a year ago in camp, and then he got hurt. So there is a lot of talent there, but you got to make it happen in the games. And we have seen, and we know all too well, you watch practice, you see some of these edge guys get into the backfield. Can you do that against better competition? But I would say, if nothing else, it has been encouraging early in camp to see what some of these guys have been able to do, because it's not just one guy. And I think that makes a difference as well.
It absolutely does. And Thomas Heiberger actually just returned to team work yesterday. Wednesday morning was the first time he was in there on 11 on 11. And it's only, again, I said 5 months since that. That's a really, really impressive ability to get back and be able to potentially make an impact. I think he's one of those guys. We always hear Luke Fickell talk about, you got to protect him from himself. So it's kind of Aaron Witt's one of those guys. Trechka Kahuna is one of those guys. Thomas Heiberger is probably one of those guys as well, just because he has had the injury history. But it's obviously great to get him back. And the fact that he jumped right in as a number one speaks to what they believe he is and who he can be down the line. Because there are some talented guys at that position, whether it's, whichever one you want to talk about, whether it's Tackett Curtis and his backup, who right now is Cooper Catalano, and then you obviously have Mason Posa there as well. And then the other side, it's whether, Allegro and Soliday and Heiberger and Landon Gauthier. Like there's a ton of guys there that could be players at some point. When we talk about positions you feel really good about, I think safety and inside linebacker are 2 of them. And to get Thomas Heiberger back and get him in there is really nice. But Aaron Witt had a big time play today too, in the backfield, and I love his energy. I love his energy. Who are the energy guys in this team? I feel like Aaron Witt's one of those guys. I feel like Charles Perkins is absolutely one of those guys. Like there are a couple guys that when they make a play, they let everybody know about it, and I think the coaches kind of like that.
Yeah, as long as you're not getting back and getting ready for the next play. There's a bunch of those dudes. I would put Mason Reiger in that conversation as well. Yep. And I know I've said before, like, you can see the energy and passion just radiating off of him because of what he's been through. When he makes a play, you know about it. But I think even some of these veteran guys, I mean, I think of someone like an Austin Brown. There are a couple plays where he's made, and you can see the emotion from the press box. And I think that trickles through the rest of the defense. So when we talk about mindset, mentality, all that stuff, even if it is cliched, it is still super important, and these guys can feed off each other. I'll say this. I think this will end up being the best of the 3 defenses under Mike Tressel, but that isn't saying much. But they're going to have to get to a much higher level in order to give Wisconsin a chance this season.
Yeah. Another guy that is very energy-filled is Matthew Traynor, and he's a guy that has laid more big hits on anybody of anybody on that defense right now. And he got a few first-team reps today. But again, it was, I think, in place of Preston Zachman. I think they're just giving guys opportunities. It's not like he is replacing anybody just yet. But the funny one was yesterday, Darren Dupree had run through somebody. On the next play, Matthew Traynor came up to stop him, and Dupree spinned off of him. But Traynor just acted like it was like the biggest hit he's ever laid on somebody, and he was like just jawing, and Dupree's in the end zone. And Traynor's like, yeah, if we could actually tackle, he'd be on the ground right now. The running backs, though, were pointing at Dupree, because Matthew Traynor was yelling at the running back group, and the running backs were pointing at Dupree, who was in the end zone at that time. I love that back and forth. That's fun. That's what makes these practices actually entertaining and fun to watch.
I was going to say, this is one of the fun things about watching these practices, because You don't know how that play would have ended, and each side assumes it would have ended in their favor. There's another example I thought of today when I was taking notes. It was in the red zone, and Daryl Peterson made probably what would have been a tackle, but Cade Yakameli kept going, ended up in the end zone, and both sides are celebrating, and that's kind of what happens in these situations, in part because we haven't seen a lot of dropping guys to the ground, a lot of move the ball, but absolutely, to go back to Trainer, the dude is super physical. It's something that Jack Cooper talked about. There is certainly a mindset and a mentality with him. And when you mention some of the positions you feel good about for the future, of course, it's safety because of what they were able to do with the transfer portal in bringing him in and Matt Young. Both those guys have gotten a lot of run. They're able to make plays, and certainly they've got some younger guys that have played as well. Trainer has absolutely stood out. Another guy I think worth mentioning just in the secondary as a whole is Kairos Gaines, because Ricardo Hallman has not taken all the reps in week 2 at this point, and obviously they know what they have there. But Gaines has gotten a bunch of run with the ones. Emilio Agard, of course, has gotten a lot of run too. So they've got some young talent in the secondary, and they are getting ample opportunity to show themselves here in fall camp.
Absolutely. I was counting corners, though, today, and guys that would have been available to play today. Maybe Ricardo would have been good to go, but Nazir was leading the group. And so Nazir obviously can't play right now. Say Hallman can't. They had 5 healthy corners today. That is extremely, extremely concerning for me. If I were them, again, we know why they went out and are doing what they're trying to do to get Nazir in. He's a good player, and he had near interception today. I would have actually said he was one of the standouts from today with some of the plays that he was able to make. But their corner situation right now is, the 2 guys that you mentioned, Kairos Gaines and Emilio Agard. They got Jameer Latimer in the slot. They've got Jameer Scott, and they've got Deone Hill. That's the 5 that they've got. How many of those guys have you seen play football at Wisconsin? 0.
Yes.
0. Now Latimer has played and Deone Hill has played, but other than that, to be looking to, again, get Ricardo Hallman back and you feel better about it. But if guys go down, and we know and we've seen already guys go down, not necessarily at that position, but other places, and other guys have to step up, there's a fall off. And is Wisconsin good enough to make up for that fall off? I guess we'll have to see. And hopefully for them, they don't have to worry about that at corner. You get Ricardo Hallman back. Nazir Forking comes back in October, and you feel a lot better about that group. But the depth or the numbers at the position are not great, at least right now in this moment, especially considering how many they had there last year. It is what it is. The other thing I wanted to talk about with the defensive line is when he was asked yesterday about how many guys could potentially play, he said 7 or 8. Do we actually think 7 or 8 are going to play?
I'd be surprised. I think when you get into the season, much like a basketball team, you start to shorten your rotation as the season gets deeper. And maybe that's not the case in football because dudes are going to get beat up. You feel like your 7 and 8 deserve some playing time, but point speaks to the depth they feel like they've been able to build. When the first 2 years, Luke Fickell was talking about playing 6, and really it felt like they only played 5. And of course they wore down, but look at all the different combinations. And Whitlow mentioned it. You can have, like, Brandon Lane has been getting a lot of run with the ones. And it depends on the situation, but you can see Brandon Lane and Parker Peterson together. You can see Ben Barton in there. Obviously, we mentioned Charles Perkins. You have Javier Suggs. Dilin Johnson, I think, has come along nicely. We haven't
big play today.
Yeah, Jamel Howard. It's a big group of guys that are obviously bigger, but all of them are getting run. There's a lot of rotation going on at that interior defensive line spot. So I don't know. I'd be surprised if it ends up being that big of a number. I think it'll sort of sort itself out, but they all do something a little bit different, and that's encouraging.
It is, because they are going to have to be multiple. I think they have more multiplicity with this defense, with the number of different buys that they have, than they had the first 2 years for sure. And it feels like a defense that may have to be adjusted on a week-to-week basis based on who you're facing. And that has to be intriguing for Mike Tressel because of the different things he can do that I don't know that he had the opportunity to do the last 2 years. They can look a lot. They can look a lot different based on what they're facing on a week-to-week basis, just because of the different body types that they have, whether it's at outside linebacker, whether it's or on the defensive line. They have different things that they can do up front to potentially deal, take care of the issues that they had a year ago.
Yeah, I think you'll see it even within a game. And those are some of the things we're seeing even in practice. Okay, you can have Mason Reiger and Sebastian Cheeks in there as stand-up edge guys. You can have Corey Walker do a number of different things. Obviously, they've got totally different body types. Tyrese Fearbry can come in off the edge. We mentioned some of these other linebackers that are a part of that. But you'll see that within a game. And I do think there's something to be said for having the ability to adjust based on the personnel that the other team presents. There are some teams that are so good, they're going to say, we're going to do what we're going to do, see if you can stop us. Well, what Wisconsin has done defensively the last 2 years hasn't been good enough. We've talked about the inability to get tackles for loss. And what Mike Tressel's talked about is that there's 3 real pillars that they've discussed this season. Is got to get more TFLs, got to get more takeaways, you got to limit explosives. And that may be the case for every program in the country, but especially for a place like Wisconsin that did those things at such a high level for so long, they know they need to get back to that. But it's a lot different if you're playing Iowa and they're going to pound the ball against some of these teams that are just going to go wide and air it out and throw it 45 times. So Wisconsin does have a better ability to adjust this season. The best in these 3 years. And I don't know whether it's, when he came here trying to fit what the players were at the time to what he wanted to do. And if year 3, it's just, you have a better blend of those players, or you just figured out what's going to work and what's not going to work in the Big Ten. One thing to do it in the AAC, and they did it at a very high level, but it's another thing to do it in the Big Ten, given the talent they have to play every week.
Mesh the elite. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Hey, Hank, give it a rest. You okay? You're all right. Just stop dropping the bone. All right. It's meshing the elite, right? It's about.
I didn't want to say it because the
elite thing.
2.5-year-old talking point, but I will say I think that they've learned from the mistakes that they've made, and it's a better blend of talent overall. We'll see how it comes together, though.
Yeah, the meshing of the elite never actually happened. We can talk about it as a talking point. It was a talking point. It just never occurred. So whether it's 2 years old or not, it didn't happen. They were unsuccessful in making that happen, taking what Wisconsin had done well for so long and meshing it with what they had done. The fact that they used the word elite was probably their biggest mistake. Just me personally, if you're going to use that word, I'm going to suggest that you don't.
Okay, give me an alternative. Give me an alternative.
Mesh the greatness.
Okay, solid.
Mesh the great. Mesh the amazing. Mesh the fantastic. Whatever it is, use a different word than elite. That is a word that has been stricken from most people's vocabulary in the state of Wisconsin if they hate PJ Fleck and or dislike PJ Fleck. Hate's a strong word. I hate, but you don't have to hate. You can dislike. So it is what it is. But just don't say it. It's stupid, because that's how they greet you when you go to the Minnesota facility and you ask them how they're doing. Elite. And then you're like, it's a Stewie Griffin meme, and you're like, or Stewie Griffin gif, turning your head sideways, like, what's wrong with you? Either way, I digress.
That was my favorite part of the show. Give me the rant. Give me the 60-second rant.
Yeah. A couple more things. We talked about Trainer and how good he's been. The best play, one of my favorite plays actually from yesterday, was a free play that Eugene Hilton Jr. down the field, and it looks like Trainer's going to pick it off. He's just sitting there waiting for it. And Eugene Hilton Jr. comes out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere, but he skies up and grabs a deep ball from Danny O'Neill. It was beautiful. Beautiful catch. Beautiful play. And it came on a free play. We've seen some of that, those opportunities here in these first 10 practices, or 8 practices, I should say, of free plays, because they're getting some guys to jump. And he made it. That was a great play by him.
The 2 plays that stood out to me from practice on Wednesday was that one, and then it was the Dilin Jones catch where he knocked Kairos Gaines backwards. But Hilton has this ability. I I genuinely feel like just give him a chance, throw the ball in his general direction, and more often than not, he will come down with it. He kind of just jumped in front of the play. Someone came offside, and Danny O'Neal just threw it up down the right sideline, and Hilton was able to come up with it. I still don't necessarily know what Hilton's role is going to be in this wide receiver room this season. That has been one of the challenges because, again, we've not seen any of the move the ball. A lot of the stuff they're doing, I think, is trying to install and implement the base of their offense. That's not to say there haven't been downfield passes, but it's a lot of stuff near the line of scrimmage, which is understandable. We're only in week 2 of fall camp, but I think you would safely say that Vinny Anthony, Jaden Ballard, Tretch Kekahuna are going to be in your top group. Tyrell Henry has gotten a lot of run, and I realize you can put him in the slot. You can certainly put him outside as well. Where does Eugene Hilton Jr. fit into that when you also consider that Chris Brooks Jr. is going to get some run? But he is a playmaker, and he's extremely dynamic, and I think there is a place for him this season.
What about Crowdus? Did you mention Crowdus? Did I miss that?
I didn't even mention Kel Crowdus. I think he's come on here the last handful of practices, or at the very least, they're giving him more opportunities to showcase his talent. He's got a ton of speed, but I don't know what his role is going to be either. You can only play so many. We've talked about all these other positions. The difference, of course, is when you're a running back, maybe there's only going to be 2 guys or 3 guys. There's a lot more at wide receiver, but at a certain point, I think you have to have a cutoff, and I don't know what that necessarily is going to be.
I would agree. We got to see a little more kicking, the kicking competition between Nathaniel Pacos and Gavin Lom. Both, you probably charted it much better than I do. I don't think there were 2 kicks for each, right?
I think Lom took 4 and Vacos took 5. I'm not sure if anybody missed.
We can't keep stats, but yeah.
Well, I can say I don't know if anybody missed. I didn't say where they were from. Obviously, it is a kicking competition. I think we've seen very little of them, but what we have has been impressive.
I guess I meant in the scrimmage portion, portion, the 11 on 11 portion.
I got
they each got 2, right? We saw them early in practice, and you actually can see a couple of those kicks up on our YouTube page. If you guys are unaware, we do have a YouTube page where we put all the episodes of the podcast up there. It's a practice video and some of the interviews that we get to do. So that is up there. But later on, both of them, I don't know that either of them missed a kick. You're right, in practice.
Yeah, of course, that's what you want to see. If Gavin Lom doesn't end up being the guy, and I mean, as long as Vacos keeps doing what he's doing, he's been a multi-year starter. I would expect it to be him, and then Lom's handling the kickoffs. I think he's going to get a shot at the next level just because of how strong his leg is. Like, bring him in as a free agent or something like that. He'll kick a 45-yard field goal and it'll clear the scoreboard, it feels like. Obviously, you have to be accurate, but there's a lot to like about both those guys. And, of course, they're going to need that, especially when they get into some of these games that are going to be grinded out one possession type of games. You need to have some confidence at all distances, of course.
So the one position we haven't really talked about, and I don't know that we've talked about it a lot, since maybe the first or second day, is quarterback. I don't know that there's been a lot of amazing. I also don't know that there's been a lot of I don't know that there's been a lot of horrible. Like it is, which I don't know if you think that's good or bad. Obviously the horrible part would be bad, but there hasn't been a lot of amazing. But there hasn't been a lot of huge mistakes either for the most part.
Yeah, I know that quarterback is probably the first position that everybody goes to in terms of wanting to know what's happening, and I completely understand that. And also, I think the stuff they're trying to do right now in practice is not necessarily the sort of stuff that is going to get on here's the lead note of, oh, they just ran a play action and Billy Edwards Jr. threw it 50 yards down the field to Jaden Ballard in a one-on-one situation. I wouldn't say we've seen a ton of that, but there is something to be said for not having those big mistakes. Yes, in the last 2 years, they were going to pass the ball a lot more, and so there was a greater propensity for bigger plays, but also mistakes. I would say Billy Edwards Jr. to me has been what they've needed him to be. The same things we've said previously in terms of the confidence, the knowledge of the offense, limiting those mistakes. I think he's generally looked pretty solid. I don't know what to make of the number 2 quarterback situation. It's just ongoing where they still are rotating both Danny O'Neal and Hunter Simmons. And maybe that'll go for a little bit longer before they have to decide. But those are, I wish I had more to offer, I suppose, on quarterback play other than that's pretty much what we've seen. And they've done, for the most part, what they've needed to do.
Is that a good or bad thing?
I don't think it's a bad thing. Like so I guess I'll say it's a good thing, but I don't want to equate what I'm saying to this is a top 3 quarterback in the Big Ten. I think they're doing what they're asked to do right now.
And that's what you're supposed to do, right? All you can do is what you're asked to do. And
I mean, do you have a different assessment on quarterback play to date? I think it's a little bit challenging okay, let's say somebody gets a pressure on you. Well, did you get sacked? Did you get rid of the ball? Did you escape the pocket and keep the play alive? Sometimes it's really difficult to tell when something doesn't go your way. And there's a lot of times where we say, okay, Sebastian Cheeks came off the edge. He definitely would have tagged him. That's an absolute sack. So when you're evaluating quarterback play in this moment, when guys can't get tackled, I think that makes it a little more challenging. On the other hand, you could say, well, if they can't get tackled, shouldn't they have more big plays if you're just standing in the pocket? But it's a mix. And it's also, I really do think some of this is just what they're trying to do on offense right now, where you're putting in a lot of stuff that means you're not seeing as much of some of those downfield shots, which isn't to say they're not doing any.
I despise a quarterback taking off and running in a practice. It just makes no sense to me at all.
I think it's a natural instinct. And I also
throw
think
the ball away. Throw the ball away. I mean, unless it doesn't make any sense. They can't hit you. Why are you taking off and running? They can't hit you.
I think it's a natural instinct and trying to simulate what might happen if you were to escape the pocket. And it's also one thing if you
then get down then.
Yeah, there's that.
I saw Billy slide. Yeah. It was either today or yesterday. I was like, hey, if that's what you're going to do in a game, all right, do it. But I guarantee you the rug burn that he had off of that was just
yeah.
It's like, oh,
I saw that one.
That one's going to hurt in the shower. Yeah, it's even what bothers me even more, if we're getting into that, is when they do it on 7-on-7 and Skelly. Like, stop.
Throw
the ball.
I know we're really getting deep in the weeds here, but like, hey, that's what we do. The skeleton stuff is, I don't even know, and I'm guilty of it too because we talk about it. Like, I don't even know why we report skeleton stuff. It's like they put this little ladder down to simulate the line of scrimmage. You might have an outside linebacker on the field, and he just kind of drops back and stands there. Quarterback could stand there if he wanted to for 20 seconds. Now, by that time, all the wide receivers would probably be out of bounds or something like that. But what does it even mean if you complete a pass when there's no pass rush, there's no offensive lineman? I understand the purpose of it for them, but in terms of trying to report, like, that's a significant part of practice as well. So all of that is to say, I think people may believe when you watch a practice, you should have these definitive takeaways, and sometimes it's more challenging than it might seem on the surface.
Absolutely. The reason I'm getting into the weeds here is because I got a tweet that said I only go on long runs if there's going to be an episode of the camp to listen to. I'm trying to make this run as long as possible for.
I appreciate it. I saw that. I saw you mention it. I hope this dude is running a 5K.
Yeah. My suggestion would be to take it down to 0.75 in terms of like how fast you listen to the podcast. Like some people go 1.75. Like I've seen people go like 1.5, 1.75. They want to get through the podcast. I don't understand that at all. Like you're listening to podcasts to waste time, right? Like you're in a car. You're trying to be.
Is it enlightening?
No, you're trying to entertain yourself for whatever you're doing in the moment. Now, if you just desperately want to listen to it and you don't have a lot of time, I get that. But like this drive back and forth to Platteville, I've had so much time to listen to stuff that I'm like trying to listen to it on a slower thing so that it takes longer to finish the podcast. Either way, I'm continuing to stretch this out as it's very warm. I don't know if he's in Wisconsin or not, but it's warm out. If he's outside running, he's sweating. He's getting some sweat in, which I appreciate. And I'm trying to help because certainly I'm not going to go out and run. So I figured like this is my contribution. But Wisconsin will be back in the field tomorrow morning for the second to last practice of fall camp down in Platteville. Saturday night, fans will be able to see the team, and they'll be back in Madison. We'll get to see a few more practices when they are back up here. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right. There he is, Jesse Temple from Badger Connect. You've been listening to The Camp.